Okay, part 3. Ran out of storage, cleared up some storage. So yeah, it, prepare to be open to whatever happens. You know, you might be surprised. Somebody you didn't think had the capacity to engage may surprise you, and it may open up something good and healthy. It may transform the relationship for the better. You just don't know. That's why it's a risk. That's why it takes courage. But yeah, so if you can say something genuine. Also, if it's a long-term relationship and the person knows and that you're kind of as willing to give, just, feedback feels a little bit like corporate speak. I'm trying to think of a different word, but that you're willing to express, positive things too. That it's not always just, you know, every time that you say, I want to express something, it's because there's something really shitty to express. So yeah, I mean, you can do it. It's like, what level of relationship is this? But if you're as liberal and as willing to, again, be forthright with saying, I appreciate how you helped me with this, or thank you, that can also make it easier for the other person and for the relationship and for you. That way they're not just feeling constantly criticized and judged, and they sense that there's a balance there. You know what I mean? That you're a human being with a full spectrum of emotions, that you're not just harping on something and fixated. It's like it creates more grace, more openness. So, but anyways, yeah, the sandwich method. So you express something kind and genuine, and maybe many things. Maybe you've got many things to say. And then you kind of, at that point, say, I'd like to express something else that upset me, that I'm upset about, caught me off guard, or I'm struggling with, or I usually say upset. That seems like a neutral enough word. I'd like to express something that I'm upset about, or that bothered me. Are you open to that? See, and then you give another opportunity. And that can be really helpful, that they've kind of bought in and they've given you their permission, their consent, to use that overused word. And so you say, and try to be specific. And here's where you can say a couple other things. You can say, I want to express this, and I also want to say from the beginning, I'm not saying I'm perfect. Or you can say, I know I'm a very imperfect person. If this comes across as disrespectful, please forgive me. That's not my intention. And I'm not saying I'm going to express this perfectly. Or you can kind of throw in some of those kind of things that are honest and authentic, so they can see the humanity of it, because people recognize that they get pissed off too. And if you do it well, and if the other person, if the interaction is going well, ultimately it is a sign of respect. And you can even say something like, hey, I'd rather talk this out with you directly rather than feel resentful, rather than gossip about you, or if it's a coworker, rather than go to the manager or whatever. I'd like to resolve this between us. And some people, mature people, will feel respected. They'll say, I appreciate you doing that. Or they might not even voice it, but they might sense, that there is something humanizing and dignified, noble. It's like a nobility that can enter in. That you're being vulnerable, that you're showing that upset. But you can say, hey, I'm upset. Really upset me when you said this, when you did this, or in this specific thing, you told me you were going to do. When we talked initially, you said, I'm going to do this, and then you did. And the more kind of, it's hard because you're dealing with emotions that are coming up, but I mean, you'll pick up language that is I don't want to say more neutral, maybe that's not quite the right way to say it, but less attacking, more coming from your own stillness, coming, you could say, rather than say, was fucked up how you attacked me, how you did this, or I don't know, some of that just doesn't feel like something I would say. But it'd be better to say something like, I felt really hurt. It really upset me when you said this, or when you did this, or you had promised to do this and you didn't do this. You said you were, I'm not giving any specific examples right now. Or it could be, that you've got different values than somebody. That came up for me recently. I think you could say, I think this may just be a values issue, but I know for me it's really important. And whatever your value is, it's really important to be on time. Or I can't think of a good example right now. My brain's a little fried. And I noticed that doesn't seem to be a value for you. And you can ask questions like, is that true? Am I reading that situation right? And how do you feel now that I've told you this? You can get feedback and kind of invite them into the conversation. Or I felt like you were overly harsh with me. I was just trying to do my best, and it really upsets me that you. And see, here I'm kind of contradict myself, because you can be kind of forthright, and it's not about being perfect. I'm just kind of sketching out some possibilities, and you just do your best. That's kind of the overriding theme. Just do your best. But you can say, I felt, I was trying to do my best, and you attacked me. You came at me. You were. It depends on who you're talking to. Sometimes, with certain people, it may be a gender thing, but with certain people, certain guys, maybe you could say, you can be more direct with the language. You can say, and they might appreciate that. You attacked me. You're being a dick. You're being a total dick to me. You're being a total asshole. And you'll get a sense, of what is the right kind of altitude energetically to interact with people. Some people like that kind of frank talk. So again, it's an art, and it's in the moment, but and you can express, what I need you to be accountable. I need you to be kinder. Is there a way you can be kinder in these interactions? Because it feels like shit for me. I don't like it. See, be authentic. It's not about having flowery language or the correct language. It's really not about that. It's about being authentic to your emotions, being real about what's coming up for you. Again, gauging, can they hear it? And so you develop tools, and that's kind of the skill of it, is what tool is going to best express this. Let yourself cry. Let yourself show emotion if you think that's an appropriate person to do that with. Really pissed me off that you said that. It really pissed me off. Or whatever. I'm really hurt, It really saddens me, it disappoints me. And if they can hear that, and you feel like you've really got it off your chest and you expressed it, and you might move into expressing like what you need in that interaction. Sometimes it's enough just to express it, though. I think that's usually the big thing. And you can set a boundary like, hey, if it happens again, I'm not going to engage with that behavior. Or, you can get firm. It's appropriate to be firm. I am going to stop interacting with you, depending on the context. There's so many different It's impossible to fit every scenario into a video. But you've got, expressing, something kind, then expressing, the hurt, the upset, the grievance. If you have an easy solution, like, hey, I'd like you to communicate more with me, or show up on time, or respond to a text, or be kinder, or talk to me directly if somebody's talking shit behind your back. I'd like for you to talk to me directly. I need you to do that. It's important to me. I know this is the kind of thing, even with all the time I put into this video, there's going to be 5 different ideas that pop up that I didn't include. But then, yeah, and if it goes well, you can say, or even if it doesn't, if they're kind of flabbergasted or shocked, you can say, but mostly I want you to know that I really value you. I'm doing this because I'd like to heal. I'd like to transform the situation. Again, I'm not saying I'm fully in the right here. I'm just trying to be honest, rather than carry around a grievance or resentment. I appreciate you hearing me out. And it may also just reveal to you that this is not a good relationship. It's not a good person to be around because they're not mature enough to handle it. And the thing that I've found is that a lot of people are not mature enough to handle it. The majority of people. And are you willing to receive feedback? How are you with feedback? Especially if somebody's skillful and kind and, not just blowing their stack at you, and they're kind of owning their side of the street, just expressing. You don't feel like you're being coerced or talked down to or condescended to, judged. But here's the thing I want to leave this video with. I haven't explained it perfectly. Let me just say that. But I've tried to lay out, some different approaches, some different scenarios, and how you can be more and less skillful. And as long as you're sincere and you're making a good effort, you can rest easy because you at least tried. But let me just say this, and this is a reality check that people need, that I need, that I still haven't fully onboarded, but is becoming more and more evident because I've just failed so fucking spectacularly with this so many times, despite my best efforts. You can be the most skilled communicator in the world. You can be the best at doing this. And there are a lot of other methods like nonviolent communication, Marshall Rosenberg or whatever his name is, and there's all these different kind of schools of thought and techniques, etc. But you can have done just a beautiful job, a really thoughtful, skillful, kind, respectful, balanced, healthy, good job of communicating something. And it doesn't matter to a great majority of people, to huge swaths of humanity. They just will not be able to hear you. That's just the reality. And you won't be able to change them, and you won't be able to force them to hear you. It's not you have to show grace to yourself that when it goes sideways and doesn't go well, you can ask, did I try? Was I honest? Did I do as best a job as I can, as imperfect as I am, as confused as I may have been? And go into it also with the idea that you may have totally misread the situation, and be open to also being, having not apprehended the grievance or the situation, and because there can be any number of factors that can recontextualize an interaction and help you to see things different. Sometimes I kind of hesitate to say that because usually your intuition, there's something accurate in there, and you don't want to gaslight yourself like, oh, I just completely misunderstood them and they're totally right. No, you may not be 100% right, but there's something in there that is probably right. So don't gaslight yourself. That's kind of why I hesitate to say that. But yeah, you can be perfectly skillful at this and it still goes wrong, and still there's blowback and the whole fucking thing falls apart. That's just how it is. So there's no silver bullet. It's not like this is the salvific path. It might help. Hopefully it will help to be skillful, and there'll be less karmic blowback, less karmic accumulation, less residue, and it hopefully will transform a situation, but for sure not always. And sometimes, I hate to say this because I haven't done a whole lot of this, but sometimes you just have to be messy and just let something raw come out. Let some rage come out, let some fire come out. That's very dangerous territory, obviously, because you can really cause some damage, but you're not God, and you're not, it's like you can become this, you can take on that identity of I'm the skillful one, and now you're a human being too with your own crap and your own shit, your own bullshit that you're dealing with, and sometimes a blowout needs to happen, and you're not running the show, really. You don't know what needs to happen. I mean, on some level, I know I'm kind of all over the place with this, but sometimes, yeah, you just gotta let it rip. And if you've resonated at all with any of this, you probably are a really thoughtful person and a skillful person. And so maybe that is your growing edge, is sometimes just letting it rip and getting a little angry or a lot angry. Yeah, or just letting somebody have it. I don't know. I think there is a place for that, though. But yeah, I guess, yeah, I'm trying to express that this isn't salvation. It's like, pick your battles. See, how I would like it to be is that I just don't have to, because it's so exhausting, man, going through all this, like, just takes a toll trying to be thoughtful and trying to figure this all out. And yeah, and sometimes, you have a really good conversation that really moves things in a good direction, but man, it's a lot of work, and it's like what you focus on tends to grow and amplify. So it's, for me, I've noticed I start to get off balance of like, shit, here's another unhealthy interaction. Okay, let me go through the procedure. Let me go through the whole thing of, getting centered, getting balanced, processing through what I can just heal on my own, what needs to be shared. And the more you look for opportunities or breathe life into opportunities for these conversations, like they grow, and there's more of these conversations that need to be had. And that's a fucking trap too. It's exhausting. The whole thing is just exhausting, So the wisdom of just doing your best, showing yourself grace. Ideally, you'd be able to just work through all this stuff on your own. That's for me, that's the ideal. I'm just able to clear it all out of my nervous system on my own. And I've been able to clear a lot of things. And I always have that question of like, how necessary is it to involve somebody else in this? Because at a fundamental level, we're just talking about frequencies, about energies. And the further you go down the path, you recognize everything reduces down just to this kind of cosmic hum. Everything is just vibration, frequency, consciousness, this kind of pixelated field. And you can dissolve a lot of that stuff because the interpersonal stuff, the relational stuff it's connected to these deeper layers, deeper levels. But the communication level, the word level, the verbal level, the discourse level is a very shallow level. And so words are not going to save you. That's what I want to say. Words will not save you. It's not about the right combination of words. Because what we're really dealing with are these deeper energies, emotional energies, fixated energies, frozen energies. And so I always have this question of, theoretically and practically in many levels, I've seen this to be true, is let's just find a way to heal this and not involving other people. So you minimize all that stress, all that madness that I've just tried to explain for an hour and a half or whatever. Because you're just working on your own. And is it possible to clear these things within yourself, transform them, transmute these energies? Yeah, because the ruminations are kind of the superficial level. And it's almost like they're the weeds that grow up out of the toxic ground of the undigested pain that's at a deeper energetic level. And when that's not addressed, downstream from that or upstream from that, however you want to look at it, that blockage, it shows up on the surface as rumination, as fixation, as resentment. So if you can find a way just internally to dissolve that, that's the ideal. And I think it's possible, theoretically, I don't know. I've been able to do a lot of it, but there are just some things that I just get so fixated on that I'm not able to, it seems I'm not able to without confronting somebody. And that's where I come into a lot of issues because for just so many issues with that. I got fired. I don't know if I'm going to cut this out of the video or not, but I got fired for the first time in my life yesterday morning. And it's been a wake-up call for me because now I have that on a resume that was already really lacking, and that's going to make it harder to get a job. I've been just fucking struggling for so long to get a job, doing tons of applications, doing quite a few interviews, I've had a few offers, and because of the situation I'm in, I don't want to go into all the details. I know I have in some other videos, but the training and kind of career path that I had before, that's all just kind of crumbled, and who I was then is not who I am now. And so it just doesn't feel like there's any alignment there. So I'm kind of in this strange, difficult position of most of what I would feel I could do is entry-level jobs, because the field I have training in, I don't want to get into all that, but it's just not a match. I'll just say it that way. But yeah, like I had one job that mostly didn't work out because it was a night shift, and practically there's just a lot of stuff about working a night shift that just doesn't work out. But yeah, I found this job that I was thinking would be a good job. It's like a decent commute, relatively. No job is perfect, but I felt like this is one that the product is not bad, and the work was pretty straightforward. The schedule was pretty straightforward. I liked the guy who owned the business. It was like a small business, so you're not like just a nameless face in some crazy corporate madness. And and I felt like I was pretty good at the job too. Yeah, this is fresh, so I'm just processing it, but um and you'll hopefully see why this is relevant, but there, so yeah, I've been moving through life trying to be just honest and accountable. And you know one thing about, I would rather just work in some capacity by myself. Like, that's the ideal. I liked that about DoorDash and Uber Eats. And if I had a car with fewer miles on it, I'd like to keep doing that. But my car's got so much mileage on it, and you put on a lot of miles doing delivery. And I don't have a lot of money, so I have to be careful about my car. Um, but yeah, I've worked in so many different environments, although it's been a while, but um, where the workplace culture just gets toxic so quick. And, with so much sort of backbiting and passive aggressiveness and gossip and just all these unhealthy patterns that I've like dedicated my life to transforming, that I don't want to be involved in, that are just not healthy. I don't want to be addicted. I want to be healed. But I also need to make money, and I'm struggling greatly with that. Really struggling with that. And so it's like, what do you do in those situations? Yeah, and in this context, in this environment, and a lot of the entry level jobs that you're going to be working are low paid, and tends to be a somewhat rough crowd of coworkers. Just say it that way. Just be kind of direct about it. And I recognize that, and so, I mean, yeah. So just to be kind of cut to the chase, some of the coworkers that I worked with, I mean, it's tough because you see goodness in people, and you see goodness in yourself, and you see confusion in people, and you see confusion in yourself too. But as you've done some healing, this is going to sound really judgmental, but I don't mean it that way. I'm just trying to be honest. Like, two of the guys that were training me, that I was working with, kind of rough characters. Um, but also very respectful of me. I mean, I think they did a really good job, thorough job of training me, and I told them that. And very good at their job, at the job that they do. Customers absolutely freaking love them, and they know the customers, and they know their names. And so, hard workers, diligent workers, very knowledgeable of the job that they're doing. Um, but like I said, also pretty rough guys. And there was some things that I just, values wise, didn't really click for me. I'm not saying I got this right. In fact, I think I got it wrong. I'm still kind of trying to sort this all out, but you know, talking a lot of trash about customers That's something that really bothers me, I guess, is that two-faced type of thing that, they're saying all this stuff to me about customers that's not very appealing or not very kind. And also, it's just a reality too of kind of locker room talk with guys, working with guys. Not every guy, but working, um, especially one of the guys, just tons of commentary. If it was a nice looking woman that came in, just, you know, in my mind, being pretty inappropriate, as they're walking out the door, just, making little, like, I don't know if like whistles or just, checking out their ass. And, I get it. A beautiful woman is a nice thing to behold, for sure. It's not that my eyes aren't going to all the same places, but they're just kind of, I guess, I don't know, it's too much. It was like a luridness, and I just don't feel comfortable talking about, customers in that way. I typically just don't really want to talk to other people, other guys, about, when I was younger, for sure. And these guys are both older than me. That's kind of another thing about this. But yeah, when I was younger, growing up, of course, man, talking about, the hot women and at your school, or the hot girls, middle school, high school, whatever, and into college. But yeah, to me, it's just like you get less and less lurid, less and less like descriptive, you know, less and less just like ogling somebody as they're walking away. And I just don't, yeah, and just a lot of that kind of thing happening, between both of them, more one guy than the other. But I don't know, it presents kind of a dilemma for me. And kind of gossiping also about the the owners, and it so I just don't want to get involved in that. I know where that path leads. It's not healthy. You just have this, and you start if somebody's gossiping that easily with you about customers that they don't like, or just, talking about how hot. I kind of tuned it out, so I don't have good examples, but it's more of like there's an energy about just because I try to avoid that. I'm just not. I don't want to feed that. It's like there's so many levels for why that doesn't work for me, but that kind of just caveman level lusting is a distraction, and there's an addictive thing about it. And maybe I should do a video on, transmuting, sublimating, transmuting those energies. But yeah, there's a spiritual dimension to it for me also, about how you treat people, and, you're kind and personable with them, and then the moment they leave, they're just this sexual object. I don't know. Again, I get it, a beautiful woman is a nice thing to behold, but looking up stuff on their phones, I don't know. Just all the stuff that I felt was really inappropriate. And yeah, gossiping about, and what I was going to say is, you feel like if they're this quick to gossip about other coworkers, and how other people are doing it wrong, about the management, about customers, it really, you either join in with them and you kind of gossip bond, which this just feels awful to me at this point, this stage of the game. It's like there's like a addictive quality to it, like a crack energetic quality, and that's so hollow to me. I just don't want to get involved in that, you know what I mean? But it's just the three of you in that store, sometimes just for long stretches. And so it's a really just, man, it's a tough situation because you also don't want to alienate them and you need to work with them and you need to have a good rapport with them. It's a small business. It's not like you can avoid them or something. But you also get paranoid too around people that gossip a lot, like shit. What are they gonna say about me when I'm not around? So there's like it's like this foundational insecurity when people are really gossipy. It's like you can join in as a way of dealing with that insecurity. Like, okay, if I just conform, do it right, it's less likely they're gonna say bad things about me or talk shit when I'm not around or be two-faced and passive aggressive, resentments, all that stuff. So you can join in, or you can quit, I guess. But for all the reasons that I've said, it took so much effort to get this job that I felt was not ideal, but not the worst option, the best option I could find, really, after a ton of dedication. It's like your full-time job when you're unemployed can be finding employment. Anyway, so and I don't want to be fake either. The other thing is I'm an introvert, you know. This is my speed. This is way more talking than I do. This is like my quota for a week doing these videos, but it's nice because it's not it's for introverts. I've heard it described that we recharge, find peace, find our energy on our own, in quiet places and silence and peace on our own. For extroverts, they get that energy through interaction with other people. And I am probably pretty extreme on the spectrum of an introvert, and I've only gotten more so in that direction. I love time by myself. That is where I recharge. I feel peace. I just love being by myself. Not in a negative way, not in a pathological way. I just love it. And shit, I need to get sleep soon. Yeah, and there were a few other incidents. I guess what I'm trying to say is, what do you do in that situation? And so I'll just be frank. I worked the shift. I did everything I could. I gave a really good effort. I feel like I learned a lot. And again, these guys, really clear to see that they have good hearts and not really bad intentions. Both of them, especially the one guy, man, he was just a very cool person, very strong, and he was a great teacher. I really felt like I learned quick, but part of it is because he was so patient and really knew how to pace things. But yeah, I mean, they were both kind to me in many ways. I just, had this really strong disagreement with how they're approaching things. And I did do my best just to not engage with it and to try to say little things to kind of redirect but I recognize this is how it's going to be working there, and so I can confront it now or confront it later. But if the longer you wait, the harder it gets sometimes. So after work, I asked both of them as we were clocking out. I said, "Hey, I'd like to give some feedback." There's that word. I'd like to give some feedback if you guys are open to that. And I was able to share a lot of positive feedback because I felt it. I said, I really, really appreciate, you guys showing me the ropes and the respect and the kindness, and I learned a lot. I told the one guy, I said, man, have you been a teacher before? You're a great teacher. You really are a good teacher. I've been around so many managers and teachers throughout my life with short fuses who just don't understand, that First day on the job, your mind is overwhelmed. This guy just intuitively got it. He was just such a good, natural, in an authentic way, in his own way, good teacher. And so I told him that. I said, you guys are nice people. I really appreciated, the chance. And then I said, are you open to me giving some feedback, something that I was kind of upset about? And they said they were, so I went for it and I laid it out. I said, and I tried to hedge it as many ways as I could. I tried to be as skillful as possible. I said, I am not saying I'm perfect here. I apologize if this comes across as judgmental. Hopefully it comes across as respectful. I don't know if I said that, but I said things like that. I said, and they're both kind of blunt people. I sensed I could be kind of direct and blunt with them. I said, I think we have different values, and I'm still trying to feel this out if this is the right fit for me, and I don't know that it is. But, I don't want to bring this. I'd rather talk to you guys directly than go to the manager and, or the owner and, see if we can, I just like to express this, that, I don't, it upsets me that you guys are kind of talking about customers so much. I think I said gossiping or commenting on, and I brought up specifically, all the times that they were just going to town talking about I don't know if they were talking about the bodies or hotness or, again, I kind of tuned it out because that energy is so repulsive to me, especially in a work environment. But yeah, I think I said, to me, that's not a professional thing to do when you're working, especially about customers. And there was another incident where especially this one guy, it seemed he was catcalling this girl who had really short shorts on, which that's a whole nother topic, people going out into the world, with their ass hanging out and stuff. But he was making these sounds like, or at this, and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? When we were out taking some of the customers' items out. And I just like, I can't believe I'm seeing this right now. This is just so unprofessional. It's just so out of control. And could, potentially be so much blowback to the company. I don't know. So I brought that up, and he explained that that was somebody that he knows, and it sounds like they have this kind of joke, or that she works next door, and they have this kind of joking relationship. And I didn't catch all that just because I was so shocked. I was just so shocked that I just was like, fuck, man. And I already could tell that he was, anyways, he's inappropriate just in general with this stuff. And I found out later that, well, let me not get into all that, but that, yeah, he told me that this is kind of how their interactions are, and that it wasn't just some random person he was doing that. And that changed how I saw it, and I apologize. I said I should have asked, but given all the other data I was picking up and just all the experience I have in life, with that energy, but I apologize. I said, listen, I got that wrong. He was really pissed. It's like, I got that wrong. I should have asked. I'm glad I brought it up because it bothered me. And, but yeah, I apologized for that because I got it wrong. I didn't know all the information. But see, you don't know that until you bring these things up, It would have just registered as this really inappropriate thing, and I would have been pissed off and felt uncomfortable. And then that bleeds into the relationship. See, that's why it's important to try to clear these things. At least that was my mindset going in. So again, I think I did it as skillful as possible just because I have so much experience doing these things. Now, it kind of, I think ultimately I got it wrong, because, and there was a few other smaller incidences one with the owner, one with, I worked another shift with somebody else, his daughter actually. And again, where I tried to, give good feedback at the end of the day. They gave some feedback, I gave good feedback, and something that didn't really work for me that bothered me. And again, trying to be skillful, trying to be professional. And trying to do it, another thing I was thinking is let's address these things up front. let's set a context and a tone of communication rather than gossiping, rather than having a toxic work environment. Let's have a maybe slightly uncomfortable conversation now that's going to save us some effort down the road. That was my thinking with all of this. But yeah, and so I ended that conversation with those guys, and the air was a little bit charged, it was a little bit awkward. I'm kind of used to that, kind of expect that. But they also, I asked them for feedback. I said, how is this registering with you guys? Is this seeming really judgmental? I apologize if so. And how do you feel going forward working with me? Because see, I was not saying they needed to change, and I even said you don't need to change. I recognize this is how you are, but I also recognize this is how I am. These are my values, and that we've got a different sense of what's appropriate, different values. But usually when I just bring it up, that's all I need to do. Usually that clears it for me. And I was not at all feeling like I had to quit or this wasn't going to work out. And I asked them, I said, do you feel like you're still comfortable working with me? They both said, well, we don't want to be the reason that you get fired or that you quit or leave. And the one guy said, this is man stuff that you brought it up. I really appreciate it. There's respect there. And so I got the sense leaving, like, we had a man-to-man, we kind of hashed some things out. The one guy was, I could tell, kind of upset about the whole thing. And the next day I got a call in the morning before I went in for the shift. And the owner just said, it's not going to work out. And I kind of extended the conversation and got his side of it and tried to hear him out. And it's funny because he said a number of times, you're not wrong with all of this. And we always say as a company, we want feedback, we want to have good communication, but we never actually do it, and you actually did it. And so he was kind of speaking out of both sides of his mouth because he was, I don't know, but I think I got it really wrong. I mean, the thing is, it's like, and yeah, I'm still kind of processing and kind of bitter about the whole thing because it's not like the owner gave me a warning, like, hey, see what happened is, I guess after our conversation, and it seemed like we ended on a somewhat I wouldn't say it was resolved, but it wasn't like we were storming away from each other. We shook hands and stuff. They both contacted the owner and just, so part of me is pissed off because it's like, I specifically did not do that. I was trying to not do that, to be that guy that's going behind their back and talking to the owner. And I told them that. I said, I'm bringing this to you so we can resolve it, so we don't have to get the owner involved. But they definitely did, and definitely just laid it out. And I asked the owner to share the perspective that they shared, and it was not at all congruent with, I mean, some things were just outright lies. Not all of it. I mean, I think some of the message got through, and it's like you're playing that's the thing about gossip and not having the direct channels. Now I'm getting it, their conversation once removed to him, and now I'm asking him to rewind, and it's like it just gets so messy. But yeah, I'm still kind of just pissed off. I mean, he didn't like give me a warning like, hey, this doesn't work for us as a company. It's not good for our culture. And I mean, I knew all of that going in. I even said that. I said to the guys, I said, I don't want to fuck up the whole culture here. You've got your way of doing it, and I'm just coming in, and I don't want to be ungraceful at all. So my resolution to the whole conundrum was just to try to talk it out. But it's not like it's not like the owner called me and said, "Hey, this didn't work. This doesn't work for us. Are you willing to modify your approach? Um, this is a warning, and let's try something different. I see what you're trying to do." And he's a pretty balanced, professional, respectful guy, actually, the owner. You can have a good conversation with him, but he didn't do that. He just went straight from no conversation with me. This was the first. There was no warning. There was no like mediating steps. It was just, you're done. So yeah, I am pissed about it. But I also don't, I want to be in this position of like, okay, this is what life threw at me. I got it wrong. Part of me sees like, so I guess, what could I have done differently? And so, yeah, this kind of ties in everything I've been talking about, because it was clear that these guys just are not able to hear that kind of a conversation. And so I look back at that and I think, fuck, man, I should have just tried to let it go. It's like you second guess yourself. And I'm sort of the oddball, and I said that in the conversation. When it comes to kind of just talking sexually about customers in this case, or just women on the job, it's something I just don't want to do. But I've lived long enough, been in enough different environments, that I'm not that naive. Obviously, I know it's not like I'm going to change their minds. They are who they are, and I respect that. I'm not saying I'm right or my values are the correct values. Also, yeah, it's like this starts to shade into this kind of PC policing of like sexism at the workplace, and that stuff gets so overblown. And it's healthy to feel attracted to, you know that's part of the human experience. um and so it's like, I feel like I should have just let it go, tried. But I knew if I didn't, my nervous system was gonna just kill me that night, because it's like, when are you complicit? When are you, and maybe it is for the best, because it just might not be the right fit. But my sense is that any job that's going to be available to me with the resume that I have right now, it's just going to be the same thing. And am I going to go around trying to change the world, trying to police the world, trying to transform the world? I don't feel I was trying to police it. I think I was just trying to be honest about my values. What could I have done different? I don't know. I really don't know. I'd like to just, maybe I just need to lower my values, I guess. I can't think quite how to articulate this. Because, yeah, it is inappropriate to gossip about management and stuff, but it's like, you got to understand that's just human nature to vent, to blow off steam. Not everybody has the skills, and not everybody needs the communicative skills that I have. Because there's tons of deficits that I have that those guys don't have, and that other people don't have. So you can't go around expecting something. You can go around expecting to be honest and honor your own truth and your own path and your own wisdom. But yeah, it's an eye-opener for me, because that strategy of mine obviously didn't work. I'm without a job now. And I've seen it just blow back and not work in so many cases that it's, I'm considering, doing some more counseling and trying to figure out a better way to work with all this, because it's not, functionally, practically speaking, it's not working for me. So that's a cautionary tale, you know, for anybody else who's as invested in this or neurotic as I am. I don't know. I don't know how neurotic it is. I guess, yeah, I guess it is. Because there's like an obsessive piece about this. You know, I'd like to just get to a place where I just kind of tune it out, but it's hard when you're in a work environment and you're kind of forced to interact with people that you, on some level, just, I don't know if you disrespect, just really disagree with on how they approach certain things. And it gets kind of awkward when you're choosing not to interact, especially in a small, intimate work environment, and it gets kind of exhausting and forcing boundaries. And yeah, so you try to talk and it doesn't work out. But I can see how I overdo it. I definitely overdo it. And so I'm working with that. I'm really trying. But my nervous system just goes haywire when I'm not living in alignment, when I'm not being authentic. It's really hard, especially with these kind of subtler objects that I talked about in a recent video. When I'm anxious, when my nervous system is revved up, when I feel out of alignment, when I'm not speaking my truth, that kind of thing, the objects get more painful, more constrictive. So I don't know, I'm kind of at a breaking point, kind of at a crossroads with all this. Because I do try, you know, gotten better. Whereas, you know, 100 different things that I would have addressed and felt like I needed to confront, you know, that maybe that number's dropped down to 50, meaning half the time I've gotten to a point where I can just tune it out or work it out in the privacy of my own space, or I don't know. There's a lot of different angles to this. And again, I think I fucked it up just because I've crashed and burned so many times with this. I think there's wisdom there, and there's authenticity and sincerity and skill, and some of what I'm doing is right, but it doesn't seem to be a match for the practical details of life. Yeah, I don't know. It's like at some level you say, you want to go, part of the conditioning, of the human conditioning, is you want to project and say they're the problem, everybody else is the problem, the world is a problem. But when, you know, you keep coming into this thing, you start to think, well, I'm the problem. You start to recognize that. And it's never that clean one way or the other. Either of those is kind of like an extreme. So you don't want to take all the blame, but you got to work, you got to have a job, you got to stay employed. Yeah, and another part of me thinks, like, you know, this is God, and maybe I did do the right thing. That's what's hard about this, because I know I tried, you know, I really did try. And I again, you know, I tried to, it's not straightforward. It's not like these are bad people. No, these are good people. They're hard workers. These two guys I'm talking about, these guys are hard workers. And you see easily their heart that they're good people. So I hope I've not described it in any other way. But yeah, so part of me thinks, you know, maybe I did the right thing and God was trying to get me out of that context, that it's not going to be the right context for me. I shouldn't be so hard on myself. But, you know, I also asked for and felt like I got a lot of signs that this would be the right place for me to work. And I didn't feel like I had to quit, and I expressed that to the owner. I said, I'm going to respect whatever, I respect your decision to fire me. It sucks, but I respect it. But from my perspective, I don't have a problem with these guys. Once I spoke it out, for me, that was the end of it. It wasn't for them. And it wasn't for him, ultimately, for the owner. But I felt like I could offer something to the business, and I told him that I don't feel like I need to be let go. I don't think I said that, but I don't know. So, anyways, and I'm doing another job right now. I'm trying to do some like home improvement, landscaping type of stuff with somebody else right now. And there's issues there too. So, I don't know. It's just tough living in this world. And I'm getting it wrong, obviously. Getting some, well, yeah, anyways. All right, take care. Adios.